The wind howled across the frozen plains of Zithara, 9, a planet abandoned by most of the known civilizations.
Jagged ice spires rose like broken glass from the white landscape, reflecting the pale light of the twin suns that barely warmed the surface. Only the strongest species had survived here, and of them, humans were a rare sight. Few believed anyone could endure Zithara, 9's relentless cold, without advanced shielding or constant heat generators, but Evan Hale had made it his home. Evan's outpost was a small dome of reinforced metal, half buried in ice to protect against the ferocious storms. Inside, generators hummed, and walls glowed with minimal warmth, just enough to keep water from freezing and circuits from failing. Evan moved between the machinery like a dancer in a rehearsed routine, tightening pipes, adjusting the thermal regulator, and scanning the storm outside through frosted windows. He had been here for 3 cycles, alone except for the occasional robotic courier. Isolation was nothing new to him. Humans had survived worse. On this day, however, the storm carried something unexpected. A figure stumbled across the ice, collapsing, rolling, and leaving deep prints that the wind threatened to erase. Evan's eyes narrowed. He had learned to recognize life in any form here. Most species did not last long outside their protected habitats, and this one was clearly not native. He grabbed his thermal suit, helmet, and a portable scanner, and stepped out into the white fury. The creature was unlike anything Evan had seen. It was tall, with limbs slightly elongated and covered in pale, translucent skin that seemed to shimmer with frost. Its head was angular, with deep, dark eyes that reflected the storm like black mirrors. It moved slowly, struggling to stay upright. Evan could sense the alien's body temperature dropping dangerously. He activated his suit's exoskeleton for added strength and hurried across the ice. "Hey! Over here!" he shouted, his voice barely audible over the wind. The alien stumbled, turned, and blinked at him. Its mouth moved in a shape that suggested it tried to speak, but no sound came through the storm. Evan reached it just as it collapsed completely, its body trembling violently. He scooped it up, careful of the alien's fragile frame, and carried it back to the outpost. Inside, Evan set the alien down on the padded floor, stripping it gently of frost that had formed on its skin. The creature groaned, its breathing shallow, and its eyes darted around the warm room. Evan fetched a thermal blanket, wrapping it carefully, then connected it to the environment stabilizers. "You're going to be okay," Evan said, though he wasn't sure if the alien understood. Slowly, the alien stirred. Its eyes widened as they took in the room, the machines, and the warmth radiating from Evan himself. It moved awkwardly, trying to stand, only to collapse again. Evan knelt beside it, placing a supportive hand on its shoulder. "You need to rest." "You're almost frozen," he said. The alien's eyes focused on him, wide and intense. Then, in a low, trembling voice, it spoke words Evan could not comprehend. Its tone carried urgency, desperation, and something else. Evan tilted his head. "I don't understand." "It's okay. You're safe here." The alien's voice grew firmer, sharper, and it made gestures he had never seen before. It pointed at the room, then at himself, then at Evan. Evan frowned. His knowledge of alien languages was limited, but he had studied survival codes and cultural patterns. Something about the gestures suggested a debt, a ritual, or an obligation. He stepped back. "Wait, are you in danger if you don't repay something?" It dropped to its knees and made a movement that could only be interpreted as pleading or alarm. Then it touched the floor, then Evan's arm, then its own chest, repeatedly. Evan froze, sensing he had stumbled into something far beyond simple survival. After a tense pause, it pointed at the bed, then at himself, then made a slow, circular motion with its hands. Evan's stomach sank. He realized what the alien meant. In its culture, shelter was not just shelter. It was a binding agreement. If someone accepted refuge, the life debt required sharing warmth in a sacred resting ritual. It was not a request, it was law. Evan swallowed, feeling a mix of confusion and concern. I don't think that's necessary, he said gently. I'm fine. The alien's body stiffened, and its voice grew urgent, almost frantic. Its gestures became insistent. Evan watched, alarmed, as the alien slowly approached the bed and gestured again, eyes wide with fear and respect. It was pleading with him, not for intimacy, but out of survival instinct and honor. Its species survived by following this ancient rule. If you receive shelter, you repay it by sharing heat in the resting cycle. Refusal was considered a deep insult, a risk to life. Evan's confusion melted into fascination. You actually need to?
Yes. Obligation. Must. Life debt, it said, the words broken but clear enough.
Evan shook his head and stepped back. No.
That's enough! The alien froze, visibly shocked.
Its wide eyes filled with panic. In its culture, this refusal could have been catastrophic, yet it trusted him enough to obey his wish, though it was clearly struggling with an internal conflict between law, survival instinct, and gratitude. Outside, the storm intensified. Snow slammed against the reinforced walls, rattling the dome and sending faint vibrations through the floor. The outpost's sensors flickered as a surge of static ran across communications. The alien glanced toward the windows, then back at Evan. Its breathing was rapid, but it did not leave the room.
You
cannot survive this storm alone, the alien said. Its voice was trembling. Must stay together. Protection. Evan realized then that its species did not just rely on warmth. They relied on constant companionship during life-threatening cold. But he also knew humans survived by endurance, ingenuity, and sheer stubbornness. He had fixed life support failures without rest. He had worked in temperatures that would have killed lesser beings. I can survive, he said firmly. You don't have to stay in the bed. You can rest on the floor.
I can handle the cold. The alien's eyes reflected disbelief.
It struggled to comply, curling itself into a cautious resting posture on the edge of the thermal mats. Its body emitted faint frost, which the room quickly absorbed, thanks to the stabilizers. Evan returned to the generators, silently observing its vigilance. Despite being saved, it stayed awake, ready to act at any sign of danger. Hours passed. The storm raged with unrelenting fury. Evan worked to maintain the outpost, repairing minor damage and adjusting power flow, while the alien occasionally whispered fragments of its native language, almost like a prayer. Slowly, Evan began to understand. It was not fear of him. It was fear of failure, fear of dishonoring the law that had governed its species for centuries. By the end of the first cycle, Evan had learned something remarkable. This creature, nearly extinct and fragile-looking, carried an unbreakable moral code, one that demanded loyalty, gratitude, and courage. Humans had survived not because of their strength alone, but because they understood survival differently. By choice, by will, by invention. That would be its lesson. As night fell, the wind outside grew wilder. The storm outside was no longer just a background. It became a test. Both human and alien lay awake, separated by a few feet of floor, yet connected by the shared understanding of survival. One relied on instinct, the other on experience. But both respected the other's form of life and law. Evan glanced at the alien, now curled safely under a thermal blanket. Eyes closed, but ears alert. He shook his head in quiet amusement. You take shelter seriously, don't you? The alien's eyelids twitched as if in agreement. It did not understand humor, but it understood respect. And in that moment, Evan realized that the universe had just introduced him to a species that was both fragile and noble. Fragile enough to risk death without shelter, noble enough to honor a human's life even beyond comprehension. Outside, the storm screamed. But inside the dome, two species shared warmth in their own ways, one by body, one by spirit. Both would endure the night. And beyond this storm, the galaxy waited, full of challenges neither of them yet understood. Morning came slowly on Zithera, 9, the twin suns barely piercing the dense storm clouds. The ice plains shimmered faintly, a ghostly landscape of white and gray. Inside the outpost, Evan Hale stirred from a restless sleep, his mind already on the tasks ahead. The storm had not let up, and the dome's generators groaned under the pressure. Repairs would be constant if he wanted to survive another cycle. The alien, Syrinx, was awake before him, standing quietly by the observation window. Its pale, shimmering skin reflected the faint light, eyes scanning the endless frozen plains. Evan watched silently, noting the intensity in Syrinx's gaze. The alien species were sensitive to cold, yet it was not retreating. Instead, it seemed fascinated by the human beside it, someone who endured the storm as though it were nothing. Evan rubbed his face and moved to the control panel.
You've been up for hours, he said, voice low. Watching the storm won't help us.
We need to conserve power. Syrinx turned, its eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to understand. It stepped closer, hands held out in a gesture that seemed to show both respect and urgency. Then it pointed at Evan, and then at the floor, as if to ask whether he really could survive without shared warmth.
Evan gave a small smile. Trust me. I'm human, I can handle the cold.
For a moment, Syrinx seemed to hesitate. Its species survived by instinct, by law, by rigid codes. A life dead refused was almost unthinkable. Yet the human before it, tall and resilient, radiated confidence and warmth in ways it could not understand. Slowly, Syrinx nodded and returned to a corner of the room, observing, waiting. The quiet was broken by a sudden ping on the outpost's communication system. Evan's scanner flickered, revealing a weak signal in the nearby sector. He frowned and activated the console, running diagnostics.
Something's out there, he muttered.
The signal was faint, erratic, but it was not natural. Someone, or something, was transmitting. Syrinx tilted its head. It had an instinct to flee or hide, but it did not move. Instead, it gestured at Evan, then back at the console, repeating the word danger in its broken speech. Evan's stomach tightened. Whoever, or whatever, was out there could be a threat to both of them. He quickly accessed the outpost's defense protocols. The walls could withstand minor attacks, but the storm made long-range sensors unreliable.
Evan glanced at Syrinx. I'm going outside, he said.
I need to see if they're close. Syrinx's dark eyes widened, and it made a flurry of gestures, pointing at the generator, then at Evan, then at itself. It clearly wanted to insist he stay inside. Evan understood. In Syrinx's culture, the survival of the life-giver was paramount. The alien's behavior was almost ceremonial, a way of saying, I owe my life to you, and I cannot let you die.
I get it, but I can handle myself.
He put on his reinforced thermal suit and stepped into the storm. The wind hit him like a wall, freezing his face even through the helmet. His boots sank slightly into the snow, and his vision blurred with the white glare. Yet, step by step, he moved toward the source of the signal. Syrinx followed, moving carefully behind the human, relying on his heat and body as a guide. It marveled at his endurance. Humans, it realized, were not fragile. They could survive conditions that would have killed an entire colony of its kind. And not just survive, they could adapt and fight. The signal led Evan to a cluster of jagged ice formations. There, partially buried under snow, were remnants of what looked like a spacecraft. Its hull was scorched and pitted. The signal pinged from within. Evan pried open the entry hatch, revealing a small control panel still functional. "Looks like a scout ship," Evan muttered. He activated the panel, and a holographic map flickered into view, showing Zithera 9 and its surrounding sectors. Small red dots blinked in clusters across the map. Bounty markers, Sarex realized. Someone had been hunting it. Sarex gasped silently, its hand trembling. The hunters were close, far closer than Evan knew. It made a series of gestures. "We must leave now, immediately." Evan understood. Survival was no longer just about enduring the storm. It was about outsmarting hunters who had tracked them across space.
"Okay," Evan said calmly.
"We move together."
Back at the outpost, Evan quickly loaded essential supplies, rations, thermal packs, and repair tools.
Sarex helped, moving faster now, anticipation in every movement.
Its instinct to repay the life debt merged with a new understanding. Humans did not merely accept help, they fought to protect life. In Sarex's species, such courage was almost mythical. And here it was, embodied in one human. The storm raged as they prepared to leave. Sensors picked up faint energy readings, signs of the hunters approaching. They were faster, more numerous, but not as adaptable. Evan glanced at Sarex. "Stick close. Watch my back. I'll watch yours." Sarex nodded, understanding the human concept of teamwork, even if it did not entirely align with its cultural laws. In moments like this, survival depended not just on strength, but on trust. They moved out of the outpost, navigating the frozen wasteland. Together, snow whipped at their faces, the wind cutting through even reinforced suits. Yet Evan kept moving steadily, muscles burning, lungs straining, his experience on Zithera 9 guiding him. Sarex followed, sometimes touching Evan's arm for warmth, sometimes moving independently but always within reach. Hours passed. The hunters' signals grew stronger. They were closing in. Evan led them to a hidden ice canyon, a natural barrier that could slow attackers. He began setting traps. Frozen spikes, tripwires linked to thermal charges, and reflective surfaces designed to confuse sensors. Sarex watched and learned, realizing humans had turned survival into an art form. By the time the hunters appeared, Evan and Sarex were ready. Red lights blinked faintly in the storm. Scanners picked up faint movement, and a tense silence fell over the canyon. The first hunters approached cautiously, expecting easy prey. They did not count on the ingenuity of a human who could improvise in the deadliest cold, and an alien, bound by honor, who would not abandon its life debt. The first attack came with energy pulses, slicing the wind. Evan activated his thermal shield and rolled to safety, Sarex diving behind the icy walls. The hunters were surprised by the traps, tripping on hidden spikes and scrambling over misdirected sensors. Evan moved like a force of nature, striking and defending in ways the hunters had not anticipated. Sarex, despite its fragility, contributed. Its thermal field, when activated, created a barrier of warmth that melted or deflected some of the energy attacks. Every time it protected Evan, it repaid the life debt in the purest sense possible, guarding the human in his most vulnerable moments. The fight was intense but brief. The hunters, unfamiliar with the terrain and unprepared for human ingenuity, retreated. Evan and Sarex remained in the canyon, breathing heavily, snow settling around them. The storm continued, but they were safe. For now. Sarex looked at Evan with a new kind of awe. Humans were not just strong. They were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of incredible endurance. The alien realized that its understanding of the universe had changed. Humanity was not fragile, nor transactional. A human gave without expectation, survived without complaint, and protected life with ingenuity that rivaled legend.
Evan noticed the gaze. You still worried about the debt? He asked with a small smile.
Syrinx shook its head slowly, almost in disbelief.
Debt. Different.
Humans, stronger than law. Protect without asking. Evan chuckled softly, a sound almost lost in the storm. You'll get used to it. Humans do what they have to, and sometimes what they want to. For the rest of the cycle, they moved cautiously across the frozen plains, avoiding the hunters' sensors, relying on each other's strengths. Syrinx began to understand something profound. Life debt was no longer about obligation. It was about trust, respect, and humans, it realized, were masters of all three. By the end of the day, the storm began to weaken. Though the plains remained harsh, they found a natural cavern in the ice to rest. Evan checked the equipment, ensuring all was functional. Syrinx curled up nearby, no longer insisting on the ritual it once thought necessary. Its warmth came from proximity, yes, but also from admiration. Humans had given it shelter, but more than that, they had shown it courage, ingenuity, and endurance that no law could demand. As night fell, the stars of Zithera, Nine's twin solar system, peeked through the thinning clouds. Evan and Syrinx rested side by side in silence. Neither spoke much, but both understood the unspoken truth. Survival here required more than strength. It required adaptability, intelligence, and the will to protect others, even at great risk. And for the first time, Syrinx truly believed that a human's warmth extended beyond the body. It came from the heart. The night on Zithera, 9, was bitterly cold, and the cavern they had found offered little more than temporary shelter. Snowflakes swirled outside the ice walls, rattling against the thin cracks that had formed over centuries. Inside, Evan Hale adjusted the thermal controls, ensuring the small space retained warmth, while conserving the limited energy remaining in his portable generator. Syrinx remained alert, its dark eyes scanning the cavern constantly, every muscle tensed. Evan glanced at it and smiled faintly. Relax. For now, the storm has slowed, and no one's coming yet. Syrinx's gaze did not waver. It had learned quickly that humans were strong, but they were not invincible. The bounty hunters that had tracked it across the sector would not give up easily. Syrinx's species lived with a strict code of protection, but Evan's courage went beyond any law it had known. The human had fought in ways the alien could scarcely imagine, alone in freezing storms, against hunters trained for speed and lethal precision. Hours passed, and Evan worked to reinforce the cavern entrance. He used ice shards and compacted snow to create natural barriers, then rigged makeshift sensors from scavenged electronics. Syrinx watched, offering help where it could. Its species had long relied on instinct rather than improvisation, but it began to understand that humans combined both instinct and innovation to survive. When the first signs of movement appeared on the sensors, the hunters had reached the outskirts of the cavern. Red blips pulsed faintly in the darkness, signaling multiple targets. Evan handed Syrinx a small energy emitter that could generate a blinding flash, then moved to his makeshift command station. Stay close. Watch my back. Syrinx nodded, its pale hands gripping the emitter. The alien had learned that the life debt it owed Evan was no longer a ritual. It was action. Protecting him was now the only way to honor what he had done. Its thermal field pulsed faintly as a warning measure, ready to create a shield of warmth that could disrupt the hunter's equipment. The first hunter entered the cavern, its armored suit glinting faintly in the dim light. It raised its weapon, expecting to find a helpless alien. Instead, it found a human standing calmly, his eyes sharp, his body poised. Evan fired a quick energy pulse that struck the hunter's shoulder, sending it sprawling backward. Syrinx followed, activating the emitter. A burst of blinding light filled the room, causing the remaining hunters to hesitate. The humans in the sector were notorious for their resourcefulness, but Evan's abilities went beyond reputation. He had spent years learning to survive impossible conditions, even in the freezing ice of Zithra. 9. He moved with precision, knowing where to strike and how to protect himself. The hunters, trained for speed, were unprepared for this combination of endurance and ingenuity. Syrinx moved alongside him, its own skills complementing the humans. It used its thermal field to shield Evan from energy pulses, deflecting attacks with a shimmering barrier of heat. Every time it acted, it felt the weight of its life debt. But it also felt something new. Trust. In its culture, trust was earned slowly, often over lifetimes, yet this human had earned it in hours. One hunter managed to get close, swinging a vibroaxe. Evan twisted, grabbed a frozen stalagmite, and used it as leverage to push the hunter back into the ice wall. Syrinx surged forward, pressing its body against Evan, their combined presence creating a zone of warmth that confused the hunter's thermal sensors. The hunter stumbled, disoriented, and Evan delivered a precise strike, disabling its weapon. The rest of the hunters advanced cautiously. They had underestimated the human's adaptability and Syrinx's commitment. Evan used the environment to his advantage, sliding along icy surfaces, triggering snow collapses to block attackers, and setting off makeshift traps he had laid earlier. Each movement was calculated, combining strength, speed, and intuition. Syrinx began to understand fully the human way of survival. It was not about rules, debts, or rituals. It was about action, courage, and creativity in the face of impossible odds. The alien had never seen such resilience. In its culture, life debts were honored, but they relied heavily on law and tradition. Humans, however, honored life through choice and skill. Hours passed as the battle raged. Evan and Syrinx moved as one unit, complementing each other. The human's experience with harsh environments allowed him to predict enemy movements, while Syrinx's alien abilities created protective barriers and unexpected diversions. The hunters, skilled though they were, could not adapt as quickly. One by one, they were incapacitated or forced to retreat. Finally, the last hunter attempted a desperate strike from above, leaping from an ice ledge with a weapon raised. Evan anticipated the move, rolling aside and pushing a nearby ice column with his strength. The column fell, striking the hunter and pinning it in place. Syrinx moved quickly to secure the hunter, ensuring no further threat. The cavern fell silent, except for the storm outside and the hum of the generators. Evan and Syrinx stood together, breathing heavily. The alien's chest rose and fell, its skin glistening faintly with frost and exertion. For the first time, it felt a sense of awe. Humans were not merely strong, they were creative, resilient, and fearless. Evan looked at Syrinx. "You okay?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Syrinx nodded slowly, struggling to find words. "You, stronger than... legend. Protect, without, law. Human, different." Evan chuckled softly. "We have to be. Out here, if we weren't, we'd be dead by now." The alien sat down beside him, still alert, but less tense. Its understanding of the human had deepened. Humans were not bound by ritual or fear. They acted because it was necessary, and sometimes because it was the right thing to do. Syrinx realized that this choice-driven courage was something rare, something worthy of respect. As they tended to minor injuries and recalibrated their equipment, Evan spoke quietly.
"They'll be back,"
he said, glancing at the storm-blurred horizon.
"But we'll be ready."
Syrinx studied him, absorbing every word. Its species had lived by survival codes for millennia, but those codes relied heavily on fear and obedience. Humans, it realized, relied on adaptation, intellect, and the will to endure. That combination made them almost mythical. During the night, they fortified the cavern further, sealing entry points and creating escape routes. Evan moved tirelessly, his human endurance on full display. Syrinx assisted where it could, using its alien physiology to stabilize energy nodes and monitor the environment. Together, they were a team neither species had anticipated. By the end of the cycle, the storm had abated slightly, revealing faint outlines of the ice plains beyond. The stars of Zithera, Nine's twin solar system, twinkled dimly through thinning clouds. Evan and Syrinx rested briefly, knowing that the battle was only the beginning. They had survived not just the storm, but the hunter's attack, relying on skill, intelligence, and mutual trust. Syrinx finally understood fully what the human had taught it. The ritual of warmth, once a strict law, was no longer necessary in its old sense. True repayment came from shared survival, protection, and respect. By fighting alongside Evan, by trusting him, and being trusted in return, Syrinx had honored the debt in a way its culture had never envisioned. Evan watched the stars, his mind on the challenges ahead. He had faced storms, isolation, and now hunters. But he had also discovered something remarkable. A bond that transcended species. A partnership built on respect, courage, and adaptability. Humans had survived not by rigid laws, but by using every skill at their disposal, and by trusting in their own strength and ingenuity. Syrinx lay nearby, still alert, yet finally allowing itself to rest. Its chest rose and fell steadily, its gaze occasionally flicking to Evan. It understood now that humans did not need repayment in the old sense. They needed only respect, trust, and cooperation, and those things Evan had given freely. As the first light of Zithera, 9 suns reflected off distant ice cliffs, the 2 unlikely allies prepared to move forward. The bounty hunters might return. The galaxy might hold more dangers, but they had faced the impossible together and survived. And in that survival, Syrinx recognized something profound. Humans were not just survivors. They were legends of endurance, ingenuity, and courage, capable of inspiring awe even in the most disciplined alien species. The cycle of night and day continued, but for Evan and Syrinx, a new understanding had emerged. Shelter had been offered, danger had been faced, and the life debt had been repaid in action, not ritual. Humanity's warmth was not a gift of obligation. It was a gift of will, courage, and unwavering resolve. And that was a warmth no storm could ever extinguish.
The frozen plains of Zithera, 9 lay quiet under the pale light of its twin suns.
The storm had passed, leaving a landscape of shimmering ice and jagged spires. Evan Hale and Syrinx moved carefully across the snow, aware that the hunters might return at any moment. Yet the air was different now. It carried a strange calm, as if the planet itself acknowledged their survival. Evan adjusted his thermal suit, scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. "We need to reach higher ground," he said.
From there, we can see if the hunters are regrouping. Syrinx nodded, its long limbs moving with an elegance that belied its earlier panic. It had changed during the journey, understanding the true nature of humans.
They were not fragile, not bound by rituals or fear. Humans survived because they adapted, they calculated, and they protected life without hesitation. The aliens' life debt, once a rigid law, had been fulfilled through action, courage, and trust. As they climbed a ridge of ice, the first hunter patrol appeared, cautious but determined. The creatures had learned from their last encounter. They moved with care, trying not to fall into traps. Humans had taught the galaxy the meaning of endurance, but they also taught enemies the price of underestimating them. He signaled to Syrinx. Together, they descended into a series of natural ice tunnels that provided cover and strategic advantage. Syrinx moved ahead, using its thermal field to detect hidden enemies and guide Evan safely through narrow passages. They emerged behind the hunters, who had not expected a human to navigate the treacherous tunnels with such ease. Evan's plan was simple but effective. Using the terrain, he created illusions of movement, triggering misdirected alarms and causing the hunters to attack shadows. Syrinx added bursts of thermal interference, making the human's position difficult to locate. The hunters panicked, their coordination unraveling as they failed to predict the humans' adaptability. One hunter, braver than the rest, advanced toward Evan, weapon raised. Evan didn't hesitate. Using a combination of strength and speed, he deflected the attack and forced the hunter to retreat into a snowdrift, immobilized. Syrinx then used its energy emitter to disable the remaining hunters' equipment, rendering them helpless. When the dust settled, all hunters were either incapacitated or fled, leaving the plains silent once more. Evan surveyed the area, his breath visible in the frigid air. "That's the last of them, for now," he said. Syrinx stepped closer, its eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and awe. Human. Survive. Impossible. Adapt. Stronger than legend, it said, voice trembling with admiration. "I learn true courage."
Evan laughed softly. "You've seen it firsthand."
Humans don't just survive. They endure, protect, and improvise. That's what makes us proud. Well, us. For the first time, Syrinx relaxed fully. The life debt that had weighed so heavily on it felt complete, not because of ritual, but because it had acted in unison with the human, protected him, and survived together. It realized that humans did not need repayment in the old sense. They inspired loyalty, trust, and admiration by their very nature. As the day progressed, Evan and Syrinx moved toward a plateau where signals indicated other bounty hunters had left behind caches of equipment. It was risky, but necessary. They scavenged energy packs, medical supplies, and communication devices. Syrinx marveled at the human's resourcefulness, watching as he repaired damaged circuits with frozen hands, rewired energy conduits, and created functional equipment from near ruins. Every action reinforced the aliens' growing understanding of human endurance. By mid-cycle, the signal from the bounty hunters' network revealed a startling truth. The galaxy had been watching the conflict on Zithera. 9 other species had intercepted the transmissions, witnessing the human who survived the impossible storm, outsmarted multiple hunters, and protected a rare alien. Across distant systems, whispers began. A human gave shelter and survived against the odds, without law, without fear, without demand. Evan had no interest in fame. He moved with quiet purpose, ensuring Syrinx's safety, securing supplies, and planning their next step. Yet unknowingly, his actions had sparked a ripple effect. The story of a single human who survived beyond expectation was spreading, shaping how other species viewed humanity. That evening, as the twin suns dipped low, Evan and Syrinx returned to a natural ice cavern for rest. Syrinx crouched near him, its skin glowing faintly with residual energy. "Human warmth. Different," it said softly. "Not only body, warmth, courage, choice. Life." Evan nodded, tired, but satisfied. "Exactly. We survive together." That's how humans do it. By choice. By will. By action. They settled in, listening to the wind moan through icy corridors. But the quiet was broken by faint signals on the communication devices. It wasn't the hunters. It was another group entirely. Alien diplomats, drawn by the stories, were approaching. They had heard of a human who protected a rare species without expectation, who faced impossible odds and survived with intelligence and courage that defied conventional belief. When the diplomats arrived, they were cautious, but intrigued. Syrinx communicated quickly, translating the events to their leaders. The human had not only saved its life, but had endured storms and attacks that would have killed most beings. Across species, this human became a symbol, a living example that humanity's courage, endurance, and ingenuity could surpass laws, threats, and expectations. Evan watched silently as the diplomats debated, their languages a mix of clicks, hums, and tonal variations. Syrinx stood beside him, proud. It had once feared failing to repay a life debt, Now, it understood that humans created new forms of honor through action, resilience, and the protection of others. No ritual could match this. As the diplomats departed, pledging aid and protection, Serex turned to Evan.
Human, your strength, change.
Galaxy, your gift, shelter, inspire, respect.
Evan smiled. I didn't do it for fame.
I did it because it was right. That's what humans do. We endure, we protect, we survive. And sometimes, we teach others what that means without even trying. Word of their survival spread quickly. Across star systems, humanity became synonymous with endurance, ingenuity, and unshakable courage. Serex's people honored humanity, declaring regions of the galaxy as sanctuary zones, protected by alien honor codes. Other species began to recognize that humans did not need repayment in a traditional sense. Humans gave, endured, and protected, and that was repayment enough. In the quiet aftermath, Evan and Serex returned to the frozen plains. They surveyed the horizon, twin suns reflecting off endless ice. The hunters were gone. The storm had passed, and the galaxy had begun to understand something profound. Humans were not just survivors. They were legends of courage and ingenuity, capable of inspiring loyalty and respect across species. Serex crouched beside him, its gaze fixed on the distant stars. Human, if, shelter, given. Life debt. Now, different. Inspire. All. It said slowly, reverent. Evan chuckled softly.
You'll get used to it. Humans don't just survive.
We endure. We protect. We teach others by doing what's right. As night fell, they set up a small camp on the ice. Serex curled near the human, not out of obligation, but out of mutual respect and trust. The life debt was fulfilled, but something greater had been established. A bond beyond culture, beyond law, beyond species. Across the galaxy, the legend grew. Stories of a human who gave shelter and faced impossible odds became a lesson in courage. Species debated, learned, and adapted, inspired by the human example. Humanity's warmth, once thought to be only physical, had proven to be something far more powerful. Courage, choice, and resilience that could change the galaxy. Evan looked at Serex, the pale alien now calm and proud. We made it, he said softly. And maybe the galaxy's a little better because of it. Serex's eyes reflected the stars. Better because human. They settled into the cold, letting their warmth linger in the cavern. Outside, Zythera. 9 stretched endlessly, a world of ice and challenge, but also a testament to what humans could achieve. Shelter had been given, danger had been faced, debts had been honored, but most importantly, humanity had proven something timeless. To endure, to protect, and to inspire is the truest form of strength. And for the first time, Serex fully understood humanity was more than survivors. They were legends.